At our class reunion, I ran into the campus heartthrob I had been hopelessly smitten with all through college. Facing the curious, gossip-filled looks from everyone around, I deliberately shifted my gaze away. Inside, though, I was grinding my teeth in frustration. This jerk, pretending to be all aloof and indifferent toward me now? Who was the one kneeling all night on the laundry board in my living room just 2 days ago, huh? At reunions, the hardest people to invite are usually two types. First, those who become wildly successful and think it's beneath them to mingle with old classmates. Second, those who used to be arrogant and untouchable in college but, after stepping into the real world, didn't amount to much. The first type doesn't want to waste their time, the second is afraid of losing face. James Carter and I, unfortunately, happened to fall perfectly into each of these categories. The class president, who was in charge of sending out the invitations, clearly didn't expect both of us to show up at the same time. Back in school, James was the icy, untouchable student body president. Now, he's a well-known figure in the business world. The moment he walked in, the crowd swarmed around him like stars orbiting the moon, showering him with praise. The president is the pride of our whole class. Who would have thought that after all these years, he'd still be the most successful among us? People still called him president out of habit, just to hype him up. What's so surprising, someone said. James has always been incredibly capable. While the crowd over there was buzzing, my side of the room was completely empty. Except for my best friend, Lily, who was happily enjoying her food. Every now and then, she'd glance at me and ask, "What are you looking at?" I pulled my gaze back, pushed the whole plate of beef toward her, and replied flatly, "Nothing." Lily looked a little sheepish, sneaking a glance toward the lively group. "Is it okay for us to just sit here and eat like this?" "Eat? No one's even paying attention to us." "True," she nodded. "If I don't eat, it's just a waste of the $20 I chipped in." Her simple-minded way of thinking actually made me laugh. Of course, what really made my blood boil was James's nonchalant demeanor. Walking out there, basking in all the flattery, and acting like I didn't even exist. "Oh, now you want to act all distant? Pretend I'm invisible? Then who was it kneeling all night on the laundry board in my living room 2 nights ago?" Grinding my teeth, I heard Lily, still chewing on beef, lean closer and whisper, still giving each other the silent treatment, "Huh? James is being way too much," she continued. "Why would he pretend not to know you?" I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could say anything, a mocking laugh rang out behind me. "Lily, that's hilarious. Pretend not to know her? Come on. He never knew her to begin with." The voice belonged to Tiffany Reynolds. Back in college, she was just like me, completely infatuated with James Carter. The only difference was, I shamelessly went after him. And even when I got rejected, I'd show up again the next day as if nothing happened. Tiffany, on the other hand, played it differently. She was the prideful type. After James Carter publicly rejected her in front of everyone at the college's anniversary celebration, she vanished without a trace. From that day on, she never chased him again, but in her heart, she always saw me, the shameless girl who clung to the campus heartthrob, as her rival in love. And when it comes to rivals, no matter how you look at them, you just can't stand the sight of them. Back then, I was never intimidated by her little digs. I was arrogant and reckless. If she wanted a fight, I'd go all the way. But this time was different. We were surrounded by old classmates we hadn't seen in years, and everyone knew how hard I'd chased James back in college. Now, hearing her voice, I could feel every pair of eyes turning toward me and Tiffany Reynolds, eager for some drama. I'm older now. Choosing compassion as my starting point, I really didn't want to get dragged into some meaningless war of words with an old rival. So I simply tilted my head and smiled. "Tiffany, is there something wrong with your hearing? We didn't mention your President Carter, did we?" I said it lightly, but my eyes still flicked toward the crowd around James Carter. Clearly, he was sulking. "Fine then, if you want to pretend we don't know each other in front of everyone, I'll happily cut ties too." Tiffany's lips twitched. Well, maybe you're the one with hearing problems. I just heard Lily talking bad about James Carter, loud and clear. Tiffany had plenty of friends. The moment she spoke, others chimed in to back her up. Yeah, no way she heard wrong. You've always been too much, Emily, still as blunt as you were in school. Those jabs were enough to get the crowd going. Huh. Emily's family's loaded. I bet her dad's been protecting her from the real world all this time. Exactly. Back in school, she got a big allowance, always tagging along after James. Spent her cash on gifts for him, threw him birthday parties, even sponsored the student council events he was in charge of. And yet, by graduation, I still hadn't caught that cold-hearted guy. Years later, I was still the class joke. I kept my face perfectly calm, pretending I didn't hear the whispers. Lowering my eyes, I picked up a piece of beef from the plate in front of me and chewed without expression. Tiffany thought I was at a loss for words. She chuckled, plopping herself down next to me. Oh, come on, it was just young and foolish stuff. No need to bring it up and make Emily uncomfortable. She made it sound like she was being considerate. I tilted my head and looked at her, my smile unreadable. What are you smiling at? Tiffany asked, narrowing her eyes. Just then, while the room was silent, James Carter suddenly pushed through the crowd and strode right over to Tiffany's side. The people around us gasped, thinking he'd come for her. Even Tiffany herself blushed shyly when she heard his voice and looked up. James Carter really was walking in her direction. But he stopped right beside her and, with a tone that made the entire group freeze in shock, said, "Please, make some room." I still didn't say a word, continuing to eat as if nothing was happening. I even had the time to pick up a piece of food for Lily when I caught her watching me for gossip. Tiffany froze in place. James, sounding a little impatient, repeated, "Move over. I want to sit next to my wife." The moment those words left his mouth, the whole room erupted. Did he just say wife? Did he just call Emily his wife? When did they get married? It was definitely wife. I thought I'd misheard, but nope, that was crystal clear. Tiffany, rattled by all the chatter, stiffened, then stood up abruptly, stepping back half a pace. Her expression was a mix of shock and disappointment. James? What did you just say? He didn't bother being polite, simply pulling out the chair and nudging her aside. I want to sit next to my wife. Why would I need to explain that to you? The disappointment on Tiffany's face was obvious, and her voice even cracked. Since when did she become your wife? When did you two get married? After sitting down, James quietly placed 2 pieces of food onto my plate. I, on the other hand, didn't bother being polite, pushing his chopsticks away as I said coldly. Yeah, when exactly did I marry you? Everyone's eyes were filled with suspicion. Who didn't know that back in college, I chased after him like a lovesick fool? How come after just a few years apart, the cold campus heartthrob was now the one pursuing me? But James didn't get angry at all. The moment I pushed away the rib he'd given me, he just picked up another piece and put it on my plate, his expression unchanged, if anything, looking slightly aggrieved. Isn't it just a matter of time before we get married? He was never the sociable type, nor the kind of man to say sweet things. Yet here he was, sitting beside me, speaking with such gentle patience that it left everyone around us completely silent. It really did look real. And it was even James Carter doing the chasing. I tried hard to keep my lips from curling upward, but my expression still softened just a little. You still haven't apologized for last time, you know. It sounded exactly like a couple bickering. The class president, who had organized the reunion, decided it was best not to let everyone just stand around gossiping. So he urged people back to their seats, dragging Tiffany, who was still frozen like a statue, away to another table. The others gradually sat down, though their ears were clearly still tuned into us. James looked at me, smiling wryly. All right, I'm sorry. But you're on your period right now, you can't have ice cream. That's the rule, remember? Oh, bringing up rules again? I thought, biting back a smirk. Clearly, one night kneeling on the laundry board still wasn't long enough for him. I glared at him, my eyes practically sparking with fire, but he only smiled even more gently. Alright, I won't say another word. My fault. Next time, I swear I won't stop you from eating ice cream. His attitude was sincere enough, so I decided to temporarily declare a truce. I gave a little humph, lowered my head, and went back to eating, while James Carter, once so high and mighty, quietly settled into the role of my personal food server, picking dishes for me without complaint. Eventually, a few people at our table just couldn't hold back any longer. One bold guy leaned over and asked, "Emily, what's going on here? How on earth did you manage to win over our class president?" Win over? I raised an eyebrow. That's a funny way to put it. He's the one who chased me first. Clang. It was as if the whole table collectively dropped their forks, eyes wide in shock. James just looked at me with an indulgent smile, not showing the slightest intention to deny it. Come on, tell us the story." "What happened?" they pressed. "Fine," I said. After graduation, I felt completely humiliated. I'd chased him for 4 years with nothing to show for it. Once we graduated, I had even less of a chance. My mom was furious. She yelled at me, "If you'd been half as persistent in your studies as you were chasing that boy, your dad and I wouldn't have to worry about you ending up picking trash to survive." Luckily, she was just mouthing off. She didn't actually cut off my allowance and force me to pick trash for real. Still, I was in low spirits, so I decided to listen to my dad's advice and throw myself into my career. I paused for dramatic effect before continuing. But my first obstacle in my professional life was James Carter himself. He was the representative from the new company my dad wanted to partner with. That day, he walked in wearing a tailored suit, and for a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. My dad stood beside me, blinking meaningfully, like a silent but serious warning, "Don't you dare get distracted by a pretty face." And I wasn't, at least not yet. When James handed his business card to my dad, I heard his voice loud and clear. "President Carter, nice to finally meet you. I'm James Carter." My brain, which had just sworn not to swoon over him, snapped instantly into alert mode. They say no one steps into the same river twice, but here I was, not even 2 weeks after graduation, falling right back into the James Carter trap. Utterly humiliating. James obviously recognized me too, but his expression never changed. He walked right past me, shoulder to shoulder with my dad, and into the conference room. "Alright then, pretend you don't know me?" "Fine. Two can play that game." So I sat there, paying close attention to every word in the meeting, not glancing at James even once. Afterward, I politely saw the guests out. Even my dad praised me. My girl's grown up, didn't even get flustered by a handsome man. Very professional. He was still complimenting me when he picked up my notebook in the car, and saw that every inch of it was covered with just one name, James Carter. His face went pale with fury, and for a long moment, he didn't know what to say. Finally, he lowered his voice and asked, though he already knew the answer, "Is he your new target?" And I, filled with righteous indignation, replied, "Exactly." It took my dad about 2 seconds to react. Then, looking both surprised and pleased, he nodded approvingly. "Ah, good taste, you've got an eye for people, just like your old man. The only problem is, you're a little slow to act. A guy like that, if you didn't snag him in college, I'm afraid that later." He trailed off mid-sentence, then nudged me with his elbow. "Here, let me give you a little tip." "What now?" I narrowed my eyes at him. Was my dad running a company or moonlighting as a matchmaker? He rolled his eyes. "Come on. If I could win over your mom, you think I don't know what I'm talking about? That's top-tier skill right there." Fair enough, my mom is still spoiled like a princess to this day. I sat up straighter, suddenly serious. Alright, what's the plan? For this project, let you handle all the follow-ups. Make sure you go back and forth with him as much as possible, my dad said in a tone full of mysterious wisdom. My initial excitement instantly deflated. That's it? I'd already tried that trick for 4 years, changing my style every day, showing off every charm I could muster in front of him. And the result? He still turned me down flat. So what good would this do? My dad wagged a finger at me. Listen carefully. All you need to do is work hard, keep your full focus on the job, show up in front of him, but keep everything strictly professional. No more of those strange outfits, let your mom take you shopping for proper business attire. Dress like a professional young woman. I eyed him suspiciously. Wait, are you using this whole love story with the Heartthrob excuse to secretly train me to take over the company? He nodded without hesitation. That's exactly how men work. You've already laid the foundation 4 years ago. No matter how foolish or embarrassing you were back then, if you can stay calm now, never showing your feelings, I guarantee your relationship will make a major breakthrough. He spoke like he was about to buy out the man's company, patting my shoulder with a firm, confident air. I got it. He wanted me to create a sharp contrast. To make James feel that just because I chased him for 4 years back then doesn't mean he can use the past as a shortcut to get close to me now. And once I understood, I acted immediately. That afternoon, I dragged my mom to the mall and bought several well-tailored business suits. I switched up my makeup, too. Looking at myself in the mirror, I saw a completely new woman. The naive college girl was gone. Now I was a capable professional, ready to walk into a partner company and talk business. The next morning, I woke up early, dressed to perfection, and drove straight to James Carter's company headquarters. At 8 a.m., I sat in my car waiting, without seeing a single person show up for work. After half an hour, I lost patience, got out of the car, and discovered the company wasn't even open yet. The security guard was dozing off at a desk inside the break room. Half my fighting spirit fizzled out right then. I grabbed an egg sandwich from a street vendor and went back to my car, eating while sighing. I'd been so excited this morning I'd skipped breakfast. By the time I finished eating, around 9 o'clock, the company's employees finally began trickling in. I had scheduled a meeting with James Carter's assistant for 10 a.m. At 9:30, I spotted the guy arriving. I flipped open my car's makeup mirror, checked my foundation, touched up my lipstick, took a deep breath to steady myself, and then opened the door to step out. Right at that moment, James Carter's black Mercedes slid into the lot and parked directly beside me. I have to admit, yesterday, while shopping for clothes, I'd imagined countless scenarios about how I'd make my grand reappearance in front of James. Would I show up as the perfectly put-together corporate secretary? Or as the cold, professional, confident woman I'd become after my transformation? I'd even lain in bed imagining the look of shock on his face when he saw me again, grinning like an idiot at the thought. But I never expected our first encounter to be so quiet and awkward. James lowered his window and said, "You're in my parking spot." Mortifying. His expression looked like he was deeply focused on project documents, but his words felt like a bucket of cold water dumped over my head. Before I could respond, he continued, "What are you doing here so early? I thought you office types just stopped for a quick break now and then." I clenched my teeth, took a deep breath to keep calm. "When did you get here?" "When you went to get that sandwich," he said, still sounding completely casual. "Now, could you move your car? Don't make the others wait. I'm a law-abiding citizen, you know." My first instinct was to get back into the car and drive off. I circled the lot once before parking again, forcing myself to rebuild my composure. When I stepped out the second time, I found James leaning casually against his car. Seeing me, he waved me over. "Come here." Why was this man suddenly acting like a different person? That thought flashed through my mind, and everything that happened afterward only reinforced it. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped aside to let me go in first. When we reached the meeting room, he opened the door for me. And the kicker? He even instructed his assistant, she doesn't drink hot coffee. Let it cool down before you bring it in. Little details like that caught me completely off guard. So much so that when his assistant stepped out of the conference room, I couldn't stop myself from glaring at him. What's this about? You don't like coffee now? James looked genuinely puzzled. Of course I like coffee. It's one of the few things we've always had in common, we both love coffee. But what shocked me was that he remembered I don't like it when it's still piping hot. Something felt off. Wasn't he supposed to be pretending not to know me? Wasn't I supposed to pretend not to care, focus entirely on work, and gradually win him over, just like my dad's plan? This wasn't going according to the script at all. A sudden thought hit me. Could it be he was only doing all this so I'd give him a glowing review in my evaluation report? I said bluntly, guess that's how it is when you're building a business. So many young entrepreneurs lower themselves for the sake of their startups. I've seen it countless times around my dad, so my reflex was to assume James had become one of them. The moment that thought crossed my mind, the shining aura I'd always seen around James Carter seemed to fade. And he suddenly looked like just another ordinary man. My expression turned cold. James Carter froze for a moment, holding his coffee cup as if I'd just splashed cold milk on him. Then he frowned and asked seriously, "You think that's okay to do?" I froze too. James kept his serious tone. A report is supposed to be honest. Write exactly what's true. The atmosphere suddenly turned awkward. I turned my head away, feeling a little embarrassed. I misunderstood. James was still frowning. Did I do something that made you misunderstand? He really was as straight-laced as ever. Back in college, it was the same. If the principal or the dean gave him a task to be completed in a month, he'd work day and night until the deadline to get it done. I'd chased this man for 4 years, I knew him inside and out. What on earth had come over me just now to start doubting him? I quickly shook my head, lowering my voice. It's because you were so thoughtful, it made me think wrong. James's brow relaxed slightly, as if something had just clicked in his mind. My assistant didn't know what you liked, so I just told him myself, that's all. I was just surprised you remembered my preferences. What did he say to that? By now, a small crowd had already gathered around our table. No one was eating anymore. Everyone was listening in on the love story of Emily and James Carter. I suddenly became aware of it, my cheeks flushing red at the scene. James said, "What's there to be surprised about? You followed me for 4 years." That line was way too embarrassing. Whatever emotions had been rising inside me instantly came crashing down. "All right then," I said flatly. "Let's just get to the actual work." Straight to business? My friends nearby looked like they didn't believe it. Glancing between James and me, clearly not expecting things to end that way. Of course. Just work, I said. Even though the process hadn't gone as planned, and I hadn't managed to pull off the cool, professional act I wanted. There was no dramatic tension, no mysterious push and pull. The two of us simply sat across from each other in the conference room and worked together the entire morning. Until the secretary politely knocked on the door to remind James it was lunchtime. I wasn't hungry, but I did feel strangely content. James pushed back his chair and stood up, asking in a completely natural tone, "Want to grab lunch together?" The invitation felt casual, just like before. Back when I was still chasing him, I'd been invited to lunch like that a few times. I used to naively think that something might happen after the meal. But every single time, it was just lunch. No surprises at all. This time, it was clearly going to be the same. Still, I nodded and agreed to go. When we arrived at the restaurant, I was surprised by how refined and luxurious it was. I couldn't help blurting out, "Do you eat at places like this often?" I'd been here a few times with my dad, always to entertain clients. A single meal here could cost enough to order a table full of dishes, and still not be enough to fill 4 people. Back then, my dad explained that dining here was more about enjoying the atmosphere. Atmosphere? I thought. Was there even any romantic atmosphere left between James Carter and me at this point? Not that I eat at places like this often, James said casually. But since you're here, I wanted to take you somewhere nice. The second I heard that, I grabbed his wrist. Let's go somewhere else. James widened his eyes at me. Before he could protest, I'd already pulled him out the door, driven us through a few side streets, and brought him to a little hole-in-the-wall beef noodle shop I frequented. Here, I said matter-of-factly as I slid into a seat across from him. After we eat, we'll go our separate ways. I ordered a bowl of noodles, sat opposite him, and kept my tone calm. Later, when he confessed to me, James admitted that this was probably when he first started to feel something. Honestly, when my dad and I had been planning our strategy, neither of us imagined it would happen this fast. I didn't even stick to the plan of pretending to be cold and indifferent, I blew that on day one. Afterward, James told me, resting his chin in his hand, that during that meeting, after he saw me, his eyes kept drifting my way the entire time, but he never dared to look directly at me. I guess his intuition told him something was off. In the past, he said, whether it was in the library or the study room, the moment you looked up, your eyes would already be on me. Just like my dad said, men really do respond when you act against their expectations. That contrast had hit him right where it mattered. By this point in my story, the atmosphere around our table was buzzing. Every eye turned to James Carter, everyone wanted to hear the Heartthrob side of the story. While I talked, James kept piling food into my plate. Since I ate slowly, the plate in front of me had become a small mountain. My turn to eat, your turn to talk, I prompted. There's nothing much to tell, James said, lifting his head to glance at everyone, his face as calm as always. It was just, while eating noodles, I realized I liked her. After that, I drove her home. On the way back to the office, I kept wondering whether I should confess. Sure enough, after that noodle lunch, our relationship progressed at lightning speed. My dad heard the good news a week later. He took my mom out to celebrate, and I was happy too. For the past week, I'd gone to his company every day, eaten lunch with him every afternoon, and then let him drive me home. In the process, I'd accidentally brushed hands with James more than a few times, a huge improvement compared to the 4 years before. So, what's the next step? Any suggestions? I asked my dad. He just said 2 words, hang him. Then he explained, the happiest time in love is the phase before you're officially together. Keep him dangling there. Don't take the initiative to push things forward, got it? We're in the business of reeling him in. I sort of understood, so my dad spent the next 3 hours running me through a dozen hypothetical scenarios, drilling me on how to respond. In the end, he patted my shoulder and reassured me. If you follow everything I've taught you and he still doesn't make a move, then drop him. A man that indecisive? Not husband material. And if in the end he agrees to be your boyfriend, my dad said, then you can date him without worry. Your mom and I have already checked 18 generations of his family, he's from a good, respectable background. You can marry him. Thanks, Dad, I said, genuinely grateful. After his last words, my confidence was back in full force. But reality proved that all that training had little effect on James Carter. The last time I went to his company to wrap up our project work, the place was eerily silent. Even the security guard at the door was nowhere to be seen. Hello? I called out as I stepped into the lobby, summoning all my courage. Is anyone here? Then, swish, suddenly every employee popped up from under their desks. Some held banners, some set off confetti cannons, and a couple even blew on plastic party horns. The scene was so loud and festive it startled me. When I looked closer, I saw the huge red letters on the banner. Emily, will you be my girlfriend? Kill me now. I was so embarrassed I couldn't bring myself to look anyone in the eye. That's when James stepped out from the crowd, holding a cake. Before I could react, he placed it in front of me. Emily, he said, you chased me for 4 years. If I said I never had feelings for you, I'd be lying. I just didn't know how to express them back then. And because I was so focused on starting my business, I never thought seriously about dating. So, if you still have any feelings for me, would it be okay if I tried pursuing you now? I didn't know what to say. I simply pointed at the big red banner behind him and asked. You said you wanted to pursue me, not ask me to be your girlfriend, right? Oh, James paused. I just thought that if I started dating you without ever actually pursuing you, it wouldn't be fair to you. Idiot, I thought. In love, who cares about fairness? But remembering my dad's advice to keep him hanging, I swallowed the words I agree and instead said. Then go ahead, try pursuing me. All right. He said try, but he was dead serious. Every trick I'd used to chase him back in college, he used in reverse on me. Meanwhile, I didn't even realize when I'd started focusing more and more on my career. So our real quarrels weren't just about whether I could eat ice cream during my period. But like 2 days before my period, when he suddenly, very seriously, asked, when are you free so we can discuss our wedding? I told him honestly, I'm busy all the time. I don't have time for that right now. That led to a full day of him sulking. And apparently, that counted as us fighting. Our classmates all stared at me like they were tired of being force-fed sugar. Next to me, Lily, long used to our dynamic, nodded knowingly. Yeah, that's what you two call fighting. Under the table, James Carter tried to slip his hand into mine. I pulled away twice, but in the end, he still managed to hold on. It was just a bit of playful sulking, what else could we do? I couldn't help but laugh. After all, we were getting married anyway. Good, James said with a smile of approval. I've been thinking about your work schedule. You've got business trips next month and the month after, right? Why don't we turn the wedding into a travel trip? What do you think? Wouldn't that mean I can't come to your office for 2 whole months? I frowned. You can work from home, he said gently. Outside of your trips, the day-to-day stuff at my company will be fine without you. He had a point. I thought for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's do it. But no backing out. James's eyes lit up instantly. Once he confirmed I wasn't changing my mind, he stood up to call his assistant and start planning the schedule. As soon as he walked away, Lily leaned in and whispered, Girl, are you crazy? A wedding only takes 1 day, and you're turning it into 2 months with him? I shot her a look. If you're not married yet, don't meddle. Just take notes, got it? If you're not going to let him work hard to solve problems for you, then why marry him at all? That's how men are, the harder you make it, the more accomplished and capable they feel. When James came back, the cold, distant look was long gone. He leaned in to kiss me on the cheek, then began explaining the plan. We'll leave the day after tomorrow. The makeup artist and photographer will come along, so if we see a beautiful spot along the way, we can take the wedding photos right there. I've booked 2 of your favorite hotels from your business trips, this time, the premium suites. On the 2 days you need to be in meetings, we'll work around that. The rest of the time, we can enjoy ourselves, and you can still work remotely. No meeting the parents? I tilted my head. Already arranged, he said. The trip will end 3 days early. First day, I'll go to greet your parents. The next day, you'll visit mine. On the last day, both families will meet at the hotel. What do you think of that schedule? Around us, people's eyes were filled with admiration. Even Lily hadn't expected James Carter to plan everything so perfectly in such a short time. What if my parents aren't free that day? I asked calmly. I already called them. They're free, he replied without hesitation. And just like that, James Carter and I were officially preparing to get married. When our classmates heard the news, the reunion instantly turned into a mini wedding celebration for the 2 of us. Everyone started chanting in unison, kiss. Kiss. James Carter, for once, didn't refuse, though clearly, he didn't have much of a choice. After all, he was going to be my husband. A heartthrob might be fair game for everyone to chase, but a husband? A husband belongs only to me. I drank a lot that night, mostly because I willingly kept picking up my glass. James tried to stop me, but it was no use. In the end, he just stood there with that icy expression of his, letting people come up to toast me. That cold stare was enough to make the few sober ones retreat. But some were already too drunk to notice and kept shoving drinks into my hand. By the time we left the hotel that night, James ended up carrying me on his back to the car. He set me down in the passenger seat while I kept mumbling. More to drink, keep going, oh, I can't anymore. I'm gonna be sick. James looked at me, both amused and helpless. After that, I honestly don't remember how I got home. The next morning, I slept until noon. When I finally woke, my head felt like it was splitting open. James had already gone to work hours ago. On the nightstand was a note and a glass of honey water. Drink this. Breakfast is in the kitchen. I already called in sick for you today. Just rest. My head hurt so badly that even if he hadn't called in for me, I wouldn't have made it to work. I stayed in bed until almost evening before I started feeling human again. I drank the honey water, then went to the kitchen. Sure enough, breakfast was still in the microwave. Breakfast for dinner wasn't the worst idea. I sat at the dining table, biting into the sandwich he'd made himself, staring into space, then suddenly bursting out laughing. I was getting married. I was actually going to marry the college heartthrob I'd chased for 4 years. Unbelievable. The wedding meets honeymoon trip went incredibly smoothly, mostly thanks to my reliable groom. Whenever we saw a beautiful spot, we stopped to take photos. By the time we reached our first destination, the photographer said I already had over 100 shots, and this was only the beginning. The next morning, we went to the nearest civil affairs office to register our marriage. Afterward, we headed to the best breakfast place in town. James slammed the bright red marriage certificate down on the table, like he wanted to shout to the whole world, "I'm married." The restaurant owner saw the certificate, and out of nowhere, handed me a bundle of red dates and peanuts, saying they'd bring us a son soon. James, rarely the one to take the initiative, actually bowed his head to thank her. As we left, he leaned down and whispered in my ear, his voice warm and teasing. "That's right, my love. Life should move to the next stage now. I should probably speed things up." "What? Speed up what exactly?" I blurted, my face turning bright red. I kicked him and bolted forward, but I'd barely taken a few steps before his long legs caught up. He kept calling after me. "Hey! Don't run, sweetheart. What are you embarrassed about?" God, he was impossible.